This is a Citrus TV News special report.
Just minutes ago, negotiations between protesters and the Syracuse University administration concluded. NotAgainSU will not sign Syracuse University's letter for now. Good evening and welcome to this Citrus TV special report. I'm Gabrielle Caracciolo.
And I'm Sabrina Maggiore. The suspended students say they will remain in Crouse-Hines Hall for the time being and will stay until they get a meeting with the Board of Trustees. They're also demanding the resignation of Associate Chief of DPS, John Sardino. Now that was just moments ago from right outside of Crouse-Hines Hall. We have Citrus TV reporter Ricky Sayer. He's been with the protesters this afternoon and he's live outside the building with the latest. Ricky?
Syracuse University administrators have left Crouse-Hines Hall where they were meeting with the protesters. They were having that discussion about whether or not they would sign the letter from Syracuse University, and they have made the decision, the protesters that is, to not sign that letter. They said they would only sign that letter and leave Crouse-Hines Hall if Associate Chief of DPS John Sardino was removed from his position, as well as they would need to get a meeting with the Board of Trustees of Syracuse University. Now, that letter did give these protesters a way out of getting a suspension, and I believe we have some of the sound from when we learned about that out here. It was announced by one of the protesters to the entire group.
So they just got a letter. So they got a letter from administration saying that if they sign it, then they'll take away all their expulsions, so they won't be suspended anymore. But that would also entail them not to protest again. And if they do protest, there are going to be harsher consequences. So right now they're pondering on whether or not they should sign that paper, whether or not what our next steps are going to be.
Now, at the letter that these protesters were given from Syracuse University, one of the provisions would have meant that they would have had to give up the right to protest in the future, and if they did so, they would face very harsh consequences. But of course, they decided that that was too much for them. They would not agree to them. They want to make sure that they can protest in the future. Now, as for what's happening right now, what's happening over the past few hours, whenever we see any type of police or fire department activity, we see people swarming each of the 4 entrances to Crouse-Hines Hall. They're worried that police will come in and essentially arrest the people inside. They're creating a human barrier for that. In fact, a little bit earlier today, we saw that just when there was a police car, an upstate police car, parked across the street. We also saw that the protesters, since they're there, they've caused some issues for when DPS tries to enter Crouse-Hines Hall, just when they're possibly doing a shift change. When that happened, essentially they were blocking the doors and there was a bit of an altercation, and when that altercation took place, it meant that there was back and forth, some pushing, some shoving. We'll hope to tell you more about that soon. We do have some video that we posted online. Reporting here in front of Crouse-Hines Hall, Ricky Sayer, Citrus TV News.
Ricky Sayer, thank you very much. And the university has issued 3 official statements in response to the events of the last 2 days. Just after midnight Tuesday morning, an email was sent to students from Chief Diversity and Inclusion Officer Keith Alford and Vice President for the Student Experience, Rob Paratsky. It says, in part, that several university leaders spent more than 9 hours working to engage the student protesters on Monday. The statement says students were asked to leave the building when it closed at 9 p.m. and continue their protests in Byrd Library. And the email stated students were not suspended for protesting, but rather failing to leave the building.
Then the university issued another statement Tuesday afternoon reiterating that progress on the commitments made last semester are posted to the syracuse.edu/commitments website. The statement says the university moved classes from Crouse-Hines Hall for the day and that only people with card access to the building were allowed to enter. The university said students are free to leave the building at any time and have been asked to do so.
Now, a third statement was issued on Tuesday by Interim Vice Chancellor and Provost John Liu, saying students are not being suspended for protesting, but for continuing to occupy the building. He writes that anyone who is suspended can remain in their campus residence and use campus dining. However, suspended students are not allowed on any other university property.
In all three statements, the university has reiterated some of the actions they have taken since the NotAgainSU protest opened a dialogue with the university officials last semester. This week, an independent advisory panel was set to host a series of campus listening sessions aimed to make steps towards diversity and inclusion. This comes after SU's Special Committee on University Climate, Diversity, and Inclusion participated in meetings with students and campus community members last week. According to the university, 20 dialogue sessions hosted by the committee members occurred last week.
NotAgainSU has been in Crouse-Hinds Hall since Monday afternoon. In that time, protesters say they have faced harsh discipline from DPS, while university officials maintain that students are not being stripped of their rights. Our Lilia Wood is at Crouse-Hinds Hall to break down the events of the past few days.
Thanks, guys. The protest, the sit-in, started right here at Crouse-Hinds Hall yesterday in the early afternoon, and later in that evening they were informed by SU administrators that they would not be allowed to stay the night. They said if they stayed past 9 when the building closed, that there would be consequences. Now, 30 minutes before the building officially closed, around 8:30, DPS came over and they stopped letting people inside. Shortly after the building closed, they were given a document that explained the consequences. SU wanted to clarify that the suspensions were not because they were protesting, but because they were in the building when it closed. Around 30 people were inside overnight and through this morning. At 8 a.m. today, there was a second physical altercation with DPS and the first food delivery attempt to Crouse-Hinds Hall since the night before. Then DPS decided to shut down the building. If your office was not in the building, you could not get in. Now, there was a little bit of controversy over that there was no food allowed, even if you did have card access. Around 12:30 in the afternoon, the protesters inside were there for now over 24 hours, and they still did not receive any food or any products, including medication or hygiene products. And it wasn't until 12:45 that the first amount of food was delivered to protesters. 15 hours they have gone without food. Now, the crowds continued to grow in the afternoon from 2 to 4 p.m. as protesters continued to gather outside despite not being allowed inside. At 5 p.m., the first medical supplies arrived via SUA. Now, around 10:15, you guys know the informal resolution letters were given to protesters saying that if they were to leave, their suspensions would be lifted. Now, they decided not to sign their agreement and they wanted to stay inside, and they said they will not come out until John Sardino responds and he resigns. Now, if you look behind me, you can see that there are still a good amount of crowd outside and they're waiting for them. They're staring at them inside to see if they do anything else. And it's been almost an hour since they decided that they would not sign the letter. Now, reporting outside of Crouse-Hinds Hall, I'm Lilia Wood.
Thanks, Lilia. NotAgainSU protesters released an extension to the demands they originally made last fall, an announcement on their Instagram Tuesday morning. The movement's announcement featured 18 new demands, and CitrusTV reporter Josh Meyers is in studio to break them down. Josh?
Thanks, guys. After the controversial signing of demands last semester, #NotAgainSU's new demands continue to address the perceived flaws with the campus experience. One significant demand is the disarming of Department of Public Safety officers. According to the Bureau of Justice, nearly all four-year colleges with over 2,000 students have an armed police force. But protesters say that if firearms are necessary, Syracuse University could contact SPD instead. Another big demand is a freeze in tuition hikes. Since 2018, Syracuse joins Ivy League schools with an expected total cost of attendance of more than $70,000 US. Protesters demand SU to only increase tuition to adjust for inflation, rather for reinvestment into the university.
And that's all the time we have this Citrus TV News special report tonight. But again, stick around with us online for continuing coverage.
Follow us on social media at Citrus TV News or visit our website citrustv.com for the latest on the NotAgainSU movement and all your local news. For all of us here at Citrus TV, I'm Gabrielle Caracciolo.
And I'm Sabrina Maggiore. Have a good night, Syracuse, and stay safe.